It's so good. I don't like that. Yes.
Making t-shirts.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Let's just
You
make
go to
sure.
live footage. You go to live coverage right here.
Okay, where you want me to put this egg on?
Yeah, you put it like
Right here.
dog.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know, let them pick up the library.
Okay, let me get a
I want to see.
Yeah, hold on. You gotta
Hold on,
get it
God. Let me
straight
get a.
first.
Let me just get this. I'm gonna sit it right on top of this dictionary. There's a couple of things. And I got.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. I like food.
Yeah, get over. We gotta get on this side. Or get over there.
I'm gonna put the
Get
chair.
over there on the floor.
I'm gonna put your
You know
chair.
you want to be over there doing yoga. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I
Let me get up there.
Let's get God set up. You need water, God?
Huh?
You got water over there?
Yeah, I got water.
Just make sure you got what you need. See if I can put this down a little bit just so it'll be like that. From now on, whenever God speak, we gotta have security. Gonna be right here like this. As soon as he won't be like Khalid Muhammad, he won't sway. He won't be like that. You see him, God, as soon as Muhammad move right here, he makes sure
blue papers.
he's not playing around, though. Let me see, introducing the one and only. Get yourself knocked out with this information. You know who it is? And I'm gonna do that on that phone. What's the name? Like two boxing brothers do it. One do it for boxing, one for UFC. They say your name for like 30 minutes. And you got the F.
Yeah.
Doctor Assad Ali El-Bey. Oh my God. I can hear that man right now saying it, boy. Yeah. Yeah, I be trying, man. I be trying to help the little young people out there, Maybe come through, you know what I'm saying? So,
Little young people.
yeah, 'cause what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit them in the head though, for real. You know what I'm saying? Because see, that's how I be going out.
What you eating, Joy?
I be rolling up. I be putting.
What he eating, babe? Joy.
Shouldn't be.
Joy.
He eating something.
Garlic too. That's sprouted up. What's that? Oh, he found the cheese.
Random cheese it up the floor.
Yeah.
This is food.
Normally when he acts like he doesn't want me to go in his mouth and stuff like he can have.
I'm so blessed. It's like,
Yeah, let me see.
I mean, Yeah, bro, you know what I'm saying? The elevator rooms.
Two of those worm
You know
bins
what
are
I'm saying?
real
The
moist.
elevator rooms.
Two of the worm bins are really moist, but they have the biggest worms in them.
I mean, it's almost like the music industry too. When I was little and shit, I used to be like, oh, I want to be up there. Then when I got in there, I was like, oh, shit,
Yeah.
this shit. I mean, felt doing the ugly shit out there, slapping my head. Yeah. I'm like, wow. Yeah, but I standing right next to Big like this, looking at him in the club, like, oh, see, he right there. Like, he right here. I'm right here. So Jay like right here. Fullcom right here. Puff right there. We standing right here. Big is definitely smoking the L in the club. In the club, yo. We was at Maria Davis. That shit on Jay-Z album, that 22. When she was like, hey, who's smoking that weed up in here? Well, just want whoever smoking weed in here, this thing about to be over. She said the same thing when I was in there that night. She said the same thing, and you see Big like, oh. Let me tell you, just like that. You put that shit out on the table. It was so many big. Yo, I've never seen a beer that big, man. A Cristal bottle like this big. It was them things was this big. A beer bottle this big. A honey. This big.
So far, 16 people in there.
How you want to put that on me, bro?
Because you do that.
All the goddesses been twisted, bro.
Okay. I want this prep. I'm prepping.
All that alone.
Oh, okay.
The whole time.
No, not yet. Oh, for real? I didn't know you already had it going on.
You been tripping the whole time.
I didn't know that. You didn't tell me. You just had them put it up here.
Well, there's 16 people in there, so it's just 16.
Still can't just put us up there.
I thought you knew you had the camera and everything. You placed it on the dictionary.
Know that. I thought it was going to be for me to hit the button and I didn't know you already had it on.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.
Peace. We're getting it ready for y'all. Just waiting to pull some things up. And we'll be going over it tonight. All right. So we're going to go into part 2 in the science of law. Because there's so much disinformation out here.
We should delete it.
So we're going to try to get it in as much as possible. You know what I mean? So some of y'all got a chance to hear about the infamous affairs that happens in the music industry. That was just my brother Heru talking about when he was in the industry. He was under Universal, Warner Brothers, Universal, you know, and he got a chance to meet Biggie, Puff, you know, a lot of cats in the industry, Mary J. Blige, basically almost everyone in which that he got a chance to do music with a Music Soul Child, you know, got a chance to do a whole lot of things. So, you know, I'm gonna bring him on in a few. When we get to the part when we're dealing with the entertainment, I know who I'm gonna have on sitting right next to me. All right, so that's gonna be next after this information here. We'll be getting into some law aspects, and we want to deal with quite a bit of info. Let me see. I don't know if y'all gonna be able to see everything. Let me see what we're gonna have to do here. Let's see. Because I'd rather y'all see the screen. And so let me see if I can pull it up on my end. All right, some of the things I'm going to expound on is, for lack of better words, in a few instances, in others based on various finds and definitions in multiple law dictionaries. We're going to deal with nationality because it's primary. I want to make sure everybody understand that nationality is primary, but also, not only is it just primary, but it is essential, because as our great historian, Dr. John Henry Clark stated, we are a people in search of a nationality. Our history, culture, our nationality must tie us back instantaneous to land. All right, so when I looked up the definition of land in the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition deluxe, land has the word Moors embedded inside the definition, O-R-S. So that means that the word Moors instantaneously tied you back to land. And this is the reason why you can utilize the term. All right, some of y'all have a problem with that as melanated people, but yet historically, this has been found. As a matter of fact, when we get into quite a bit of information, not only did John Henry Clark say it, but so did several other great scholars of ours. All right. So we want to bring that information to the forefront. They was giving us clues. Some of us, might not caught them, but we had to go back in order to find out exactly what was really going on historically, as we still do. All right, we still have to go back and look historically and find out, because there's so much information, disinformation and misinformation put out purposely, by quote unquote, individuals, and others, alphabet boys, or whatever the case is, in order to disrupt the movement and to have infighting, which it seemed like that will never stop, based on the antics and which I keep seeing over and over again. And this is Moors fighting Moors, each one trying to be the super supreme grand sheik of the world, and this is what I personally see in the so-called movement, and it's ridiculous. So much so till, people try to get me to debate, but I can't debate, only reason why I debated the first time with Brother Seti was because in which that I had, in which that Brother Azariah told me, Brother Panic told me, and they both told me the exact same thing, is that the ancestors said, yo, you need to do it, So that's why I did it. If it don't come from the spiritual side of things, I'm not dealing with it. And after that particular debate, all of them told me, that the spirit said, yo, don't be doing no more damn debates. That was it. That's all you need to do. And personally, when I showed the fact that Dr. Ben was a graduate of the University of Barcelona in Spain with a PhD in Moorish history, and that in his book, Cultural Genocides, he wrote that these are just some of the most honorable names in which that we have had in history, and the first word was the word Moors. Do you not think that he was also trying to tie us back to land as being that it was the first name? Remember, Dr. Ben was an international Mason and Shriner, all right? Understand this, what I'm telling you, all right? So not only did these brothers have their own, were they part of secret orders, but they themselves had their own order. As you know, Dr. Ben had his order called the Craft of Amen Ra. All right. That's just what it is. So we have to, you know, start tying these things together, because most people don't want you to think. They don't want us to know. They don't want us to think, you know. And this is another travesty in which that we have to face here, and another problem in which that is going on. You know, seemingly everyone else around the world know who we are, but us. They all waiting for us to reclaim a nationality, and yet we're not, as they say, walking up the right tree yet. You know, just black. You know, some, you know, want to be African American. You know, those are the two newer words or labels on the scene for us. You know, ever since the 1960s to the 1990s, that 30-year period again. As I often say, every 30 years, it seems that we are the only people on the face of the planet that change our identity. You know, 1870, we were Indians. 1900, we was Negroes. 1930, we were coloreds. 1960, we were black. 1990, we were okay. So, as I often say, by 2020, we will be Moors, you know, and that's just the way it is, because we're gonna have to keep hitting our people in the head with this information. And a lot of Moors have done such a horrible job as far as, you know, bringing people into this information, either through poor teachings or either through robbing and stealing, you know, making a living off of people. Understand that what we do, we build. All right? We just don't take your money, promise you a dream. You know, we actually build with the funds in which that comes. Now, people have to understand is that, you know, say, well, why don't you just operate on the private side? You can't just operate on the private side. Why? It's because Moors don't own grocery stores. Moors don't, which is, I'm talking about a chain of grocery stores. Moors don't own chains of gas stations. And even if they did own gas stations, they still would have to get the gas from somewhere. So in order to get gas from somewhere, that means they would have to own land. See how this goes right back to land again? Because land is where you get your resources from. That's why it's important to tie you back to land. But you don't make cars, manufacture cars on a large scale. You know, show me a car distribution center or factory that Moors make. So as long as you're not making anything worthwhile, you know, shoot, there's some Moors who just started doing toilet paper, but even then, they're not manufacturing the toilet paper. They get the toilet paper from China or elsewhere, you know, and they selling it at a lower, cheaper price because they're able to get it wholesale. But that still is not their manufacturing ability. In other words, Moors aren't manufacturing anything to a large scale. And this is what we must work towards, all right? Prophet Noble Ali stated that it will come a time where not just run the government, but also control the economics. And the Europeans will have to come to us, all right? So if that is the case, I think that we have to learn how to get that in the heads of our people. You know what I'm saying? But first we got to get in our heads, you know, because right now we're doing a horrible job at it, to be real, you know. So, you know, let's try to do a little bit better here, you know, because all this infighting about the same thing that Negroes been infighting about for the last 100 years, you know, is showing that nobody has grown spiritually, you know, and not saying that you was there 100 years ago. I'm just saying that the same nonsense in which that took place then is still happening now. And that means that's a sign of insanity. Albert Einstein said that, you know, to repetitively do something over and over again and not learn from those results means that it's a sign of insanity. And history best rewards or research. What that means is that you go back and you study history in order to find out the flaws of what took place. And you attempt to make things better by not doing the same shit that you did before. All right? Historically. And so when we see that this is taking place over and over again with this infighting and nothing is changing. There's no, we're doing all this debating and nothing is changing. And then you're not doing the debates with the Albion, with the European. See, he's not debating you on that subject, if you Moors or not. All right? I know when we went to the Grand Lodge of England, my wife and I, the curator of the museum portion asked us about how we felt about the possibilities of our first Black president. Even get the words out our mouths, me and the two brothers that came, that brought us there to England to do the lecture for 3 days. My wife looked and said, there was more than 9 before him. He jumped back like Mike Tyson hit him with his hands up. Who told you that? You're not supposed to know that. Did they tell you that? Now, what the fuck you think that meant? Huh? Who told you that? You're not supposed to know that. Why are you not supposed to know that? It's 2017. Because there's information in which that you are not supposed to know. Hidden. Or at least he thought it was. And that was one of the things in which that he thought was still hidden. In which that my wife exposed to him that we knew. Okay? As you see, she back here trying to get her workout on. All right, but that is just what it was. That's what it is. And the fact is that he also said, who told you that? As if the Albion nowadays have to tell us that. So that meant to me at the time that a lot of what Brother Hakeem H.Y.Bey, Brother Taj, Queen Valahara, now who I sat under, and they was all great seals. I myself was a great seal member. As a matter of fact, I started out as a Qazi, which was a judge, moved to YS YC Alfarez, you know, which was the international spokesman for the Great Seal, and then I became an Emir. All right, all this was under Yusuf Rami, Sultan Yusuf Rami Bey. All right, alayhi salam. He just passed, you know, a few years ago. So we want to be able to then, and you know, there's more still debating over the fact, you know, of some of the silliest things that I can think of. You know, because as if they knew Prophet Noble Drew Ali personally, as if they walked with the man back in 1913 to 1928. You know, when they changed from the Canaanite temple to the Moabite temple to Science Temple, or the Moorish Temple of Science to the Moorish Science Temple of America. You know, as if you walked and you seen all of these changes. Okay? You know that isn't true, at least not in this incarnation. So what that means is that you're fooling yourself trying to think that you are the super supreme grand sheik of all the Moors in the world. And if you really want unity, then it wouldn't be coming through debating. Think about that shit. All right? If you want unity, why would you pick the format of debate? You want unity, then you would do a treaty, just like the United States did with the Native Americans, just like they did with other countries around the world. As a matter of fact, so much so till the United Nations was created to be the hub for treaties at the international level. And when the United States signed on to one of the most satisfying treaties that I can think of, which is the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People at the United Nations, where 144 countries passed. Now, 144 countries passed it. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that's coincidence. Maybe it's symbolic to the fact of 144,000. But 144 countries passed it. All right, George Bush was president and he didn't sign on to it in 2007. All right, when it was passed. It was passed September the 13th, 2007. All right, which happened to be 11 years after the death of Tupac, allegedly, because he allegedly passed September 13th, 1996. Coincidence, 11 in numerology means what? Master builder number. All right. Article 6 states specifically that indigenous people have a right to a nationality. And you get the Universal Declaration on Human Rights that was passed in 1948, which Malcolm and even Martin Luther King started gravitating towards. You would see that Article 15 states that you have the right to a nationality. Your child has a right to a nationality. All right? So why, if this was written in 1948, who was that for? All right? As the simple fact is that you're one of the only people on the planet, so-called Negro, blacks, and coloreds, African Americans, that do not have a nationality. Why was it put in writing in 2007? Now, people want to say, well, let's believe that Barack, when he signed it, it wasn't meant for you. And I know it wasn't. Well, come on. No, you don't, because I went to the United Nations in 2008. To the United Nations in 2008. And we met with international lawyers. And they told us that it was written for us in mind. Because we the only people who don't have a nationality. So who else would the damn Article 6 be talking about? Think about that. So this is the ignorance that is coming from people who believe that they know something and they don't. Because as Seti say, they ain't even been from around the corner.
Ain't been nowhere but around.
All right. So let's get out that ego. This isn't about ego. This is actual experience that I'm talking about at the United Nations, in front of international lawyers, speaking with them face to face. All right. Simple. At that particular conference, we had over 300 people to come to our event that we held at the United Nations. We had the indigenous president, all right, of Morocco. In other words, he was the president of Indigenous Affairs of Morocco. He came and spoke at our lecture. And he stated, "We are in your land. We have your flag." That's what he said. So this makes us think that there has to be a tie between the kingdom and the empire. I mean, people are missing that point altogether. All right? People are missing that point. And this is a shame because they're doing a disservice to the people. All right? So when we look at Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1 and Volume 2 by David McRitchie, this is what he says. Right here, he says, Morris is a word which suggests a great deal. It has this in common with the Uigurian word Kara and Sierra, previously glanced at, that is not only signifies swarthiness of skin, but it is radically connected with a marsh or morris or course, as it is called in Scotland. One meaning of morris in Latin is plus. Word marsh, marish, marshy, mirsch in Saxon, and more or mere are all different forms clearly of one original root, wherever they may be, that may be, of one original root, no matter, and this is what he said, whatever that may be. And it says the Alpine land, watery land. All right, remember I told you that the word moors is embedded inside the definition of land. He verifying this. All right, he verifies this. He goes on and he said the word mir, Ushalin Jin, among the Hellenic Greeks, just as the same land is called Moria. This is why in Spanish they say Moreno. By the moderate post-Hellenistic or Hellenic or Romantic Greek form Moor, the name for the sea in the Slavic vernacular of its inhabitants during the heart of the Middle Ages. So, say Lord Stranford, speaking authoritatively, says in Gaelic, the sea is Mara or mirror, which suggests the Latin. All right, so once again, once you get to the definition of land, it states specifically what land is. All right, land of fields, marshes, moors. It says that it's moors. All right, this is very hard for people to comprehend, seemingly, because this is a debate that is still going on in the so-called conscious community. All right, you are land and water, as you heard. The word moor means land and water. That's what you are. You are land and water. And you are the original inhabitants here. So therefore, you are a Moor. All right? Many of y'all getting caught up into the language from the various sources in which that I just went over. The word goes no further back than the Greek or Roman. And that's not true. All right? There's a still in which that my wife and I seen in the British Museum when we went to London. And on this still, it says Mur. All right? Mur. All right? And it says high priest of the order of Anu. Now, Anu, obviously, the high priest of the order of Anu obviously becomes the order of Melchizedek. And being a high priest, or being a priest. And the fact that the still said it was a Moor or Mur, all right, signified to me that once again, and this is an ancient Egyptian, all right, ancient Egyptian, Kemetic, Temerian, still. All right, so we know that the word goes further back than the Greek and the Romans, because who taught the Greeks and the Romans? All right, we talking about the original Greeks and we talking about the original Romans. For those that don't know historically, let me make this clear. Who was called the Cretans. All right, the Minoans were followers of men, which is in terms of amen. The same one that Jews said at the end of their prayers to this very day. but Min was the fertility deity. So oftentimes you would see him with his penis erected. And this is where the obelisk symbol comes from, which is called the Tekin or the Tekenu of Osar, or obelisk. Now, keep that in mind, because as we continue on, we're going to see how all of this fits together. All right, so let's look at some things. All right, we looked up water in the Black's Law Dictionary, and it says a designating a commodity or a subject of ownership. This term has the same meaning in law as in common speech, but in another sense, and especially in the plural, it may designate a body of water such as a river, a lake, or an ocean, or in body of water such as in phrase, foreign waters or waters of the United States and the like. All right. It says water is neither land nor tenement nor susceptible of absolute ownership. It is a movable thing and must of necessity continue common by the law of nature. All right. It emits only of a transit Yusuf fruitary property, and if it escapes for a moment, the right to it is gone forever. The qualified owner having no legal power or reclamation. You know what I'm saying? It says it is not capable of being sued for by the name of water, nor by a calculation of its cubics or superficial measure, but the suit may be brought for the land which lies at the bottom covering the water. That land, neither is it a tenement because it is not a permanent nature, nor the subject of absolute property. It is not at any possible sense real estate, and hence it is not embraced in the covenant of general warranty. Mitchell versus Warner. Now, your body is 75% water. You can move. So therefore, it just gave you the key word. It says has no legal power of reclamation. All right, so you can't reclamate. Someone else can't reclamate. As you see here, the qualified owner having no legal power of reclamation. So that means that the Albion can't own you. And we've told you already that property can't own property. Meaning that if the property reclamates, it is no longer under the ownership or the assumed ownership by the alleged owner. Now, who's the owner? Well, they made sure that they could have you as collateral. Certificate. The birth certificate is the article in which that gives an individual the ability in order to bring you into court, because everything is predicated on that birth certificate. All right? Everything. The whole banking system is predicated on it. All right? We just finished saying that if you want to control water, it's on the banks. Well, it's no coincidence that on your birth certificate, it has Midwest Bank Note Company or some type of bank note company, showing what? That to control the water, and it's not you. All right, what we're talking about as far as reclamation is you controlling your 75% water and 25% land mass. However, as it just finished saying, reclamation. This is why we refer to the process of obtaining certain affidavits. We refer to it as what? Reclamation. Because it's stated right here that the qualified owner have no legal power of reclamation. All right, it emits only a transit. All right, user fruitory property, and if it escapes for a moment, the right to it is gone forever. So if you escape for a moment, all right, in other words, not end up like Kuta Kinte, all right, or Toby, getting that foot cut off, all right. But if you was able to escape for the moment, all right, how do you escape for the moment? You escape for the moment, as it says, by reclamation. And therefore, the assumed so-called qualified owner no longer have legal or lawful power over an individual who reclamates. This is basically the same thing in which that we're talking about right here. So this goes without saying, because we have individuals now who are saying that you don't need paperwork. Well, that's obvious that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. All right? Talking about. Because if you do some study on the 10 maxims of law, all right, the 10 maxims of law states specifically, all right, specifically, you know, that your affidavit must be expressed, all right, or that your truth must be expressed in the form of an affidavit. That's according to the 10 maxims of law. All right. So for these fools out here talking about you don't need paperwork, but yet they have paperwork on you from the time you were born. You go to the doctor, they keep those records. All right. You go to the dental office, they keep those records. You're born at birth, they put a birth certificate on you, and they keep those records of your health throughout your whole life. Right? So what the hell is this nonsense with fools talking about? Huh? What is this? That they claiming that you don't need documents, you don't need paperwork. Why don't you need paperwork? Because they believe that if they can just go up into a courtroom and state that they are more, that they're going to listen to you. No. In fact, you might have a psychological evaluation and get thrown in jail because you don't have a paper trail. You didn't go in there with a notice of restricted appearance or a notice of special appearance, in which that would have been what? That would have been able to solidify your position with a copy of your nationality or reclamation, your status, that you're not a 14th Amendment citizen, as stated in the Dred Scott case of 1856, 1857, which states specifically, Judge Taney ruled that you're not those of Negro, African, those of African. All right, now remember, this is what they call you. They call you African American. So regardless on if you have Native American blood, as they claim, you know, as African American or Black, every 30 years of the name change. All right, so if you don't send it off certified mail return receipt of your restricted appearance or your special appearance, which is opposite to a general appearance. You don't want to have a general appearance. Just go in court. General appearance, the judge would say, well, where do you live? Well, I live in the state of North Carolina. Oh, you do? All right, officer, bailiff, haul his ass off to jail. Why is that? It's because you stood under what the judge stated. When the judge asked you, do you understand charges being brought up against you?
Where do you live?
All right, as well. So where do you live, and do you understand the charges being brought up against you?
In my body, Your Honor, with all due respect.
Right, but if you don't say in my body, Because that's where the soul dwells. The soul dwells in the body. Remember, the body is the temple of God. God is the soul. Your divine spark in your body that gives you life, that give you movement. They give you movement. All right, so we want to make that clear to you. So, when the judge states that, do you understand the charge being brought up against you? What else charges? A credit card charges. All right, and if you don't pay that credit card, that means you now become a debtor. A debit. Only thing they did was put an I in between the DEBT, which is debt. They put an I in between it. All right, so I debt, but debit. Right, so that's why if you try to do a 1099 OID and you try to utilize the debit side, it's not going to work. It has to be the credit side. You have to save your credit, or your credit transactions, or your mortgage transactions, or your rent transactions, or your grocery transactions. All these things has to be done. Now, if you read the maxims of law, right? In commerce, truth is sovereign. So you coming in court talking about you a sovereign, all right, which some still do. And no, Moors are not sovereign citizens, because that's an oxymoron, which states such. All right? Moors are Aboriginal indigenous, which makes us sovereign of the land automatically, but not citizens, because you can't be both. Citizen means a subject to. Sovereign means the master of. That's two different states. Anyway, it says in commerce, truth is sovereign. All right? And the sovereign tells only the truth. Your word is bond. And if the truth was not sovereign in commerce, all human actions and interrelations, there would be no basis for anything. No basis for law and order, no basis for accountability, responsibility. There would be no standards, no capacity to resolve anything. It would be anything goes, every man for him or herself, and nothing matters. The law of the jungle, as they would say. So in commerce, you know what I'm saying, to tell a lie is to go against the mind. There's an Oriental proverb that says, of all that is good, sublime is supreme. So your truth is expressed in the form of an affidavit. So this totally go against the nonsense in which that you hear from some Moors, or those who claim to be Moors, because they don't have no documentation, so they still Negro, black, and colored anyway, pretending to be Moors. All right. But anyway, it says truth is expressed in the form of an affidavit. So an affidavit is your solemn expression of your truth. An affidavit must be occupied and must underlie and form the foundation for any commercial transaction whatsoever. So if you go to court, you got to have an affidavit. All right, if you go to court, you got to have it. No, God, I know you ain't just break the same truth.
Yeah, I broke the same one down.
So right here, you know what I'm saying? All right, so you got to have an affidavit. So that's what we talk about. Special appearance or restricted appearance, you send in, which is opposite of a general appearance. All right, which means that you're going in stating that the 14th Amendment was never fully ratified, because there's some fools out here saying that it was. But yet Huckabee, who ran for president and been a politician for the last 30 some odd years, stated specifically that it was not fully ratified, and therefore it says that so-called blacks are not full status U.S. citizens, which is fine. Why would you want to be a U.S. citizen to that capacity. They have to give you a loophole in order to allow for you to come back into your own information. This is only right. For the fact is that you wasn't able to read for at least 150 years, allegedly, based on what they told you about slavery, right? That's what they told you. And during that time period, they burnt books, documentation such as deeds, records, or in other words, actually land grants, land patents, you back to the land, millions and millions and millions of the acres of land, and thus castrated you to the level of being a Negro, Black, and colored, which is simply a label or labels. All right, so you want to be able to write your affidavit expressing your truth, that you are indigenous, that you're aboriginal, all right, which automatically make you a sovereign in that sense. Now, people say, well, you know, Prophet Noble Ali didn't teach the sovereign thing. No, he didn't teach the sovereign citizen thing, because Moors are not sovereign citizens. And I'm gonna have to keep saying that over and over again, especially for the Europeans, the Albions that have a tendency of trying to group the Moors together with, quote unquote, the sovereign citizens. Number one, we don't do the same things that the sovereign citizens do. Our whole thing is a little bit different, you know, in the fact, we know that we have to declare nationality, all right? The Albion can't claim a nationality, all right? He can't claim a nationality over here, all right? Because he told us in school that he was an immigrant, that he was a settler, all right? And if you settle for that nonsense that this land is your land, this land is my land, if you settle for that, because that's not true. That's just the simple case, all right? You are indigenous and aboriginal, all right? We got information going back, if you get Forbidden Archaeology and the Hidden History of the Human Race by Michael Creedmoor and Richard L. Thompson, 2 different books, all right? In both, it states that there was people here, not hominids, not homonyms. Homonyms and hominids are 8 creatures that they try to say that you evolved from. You're aquatic ape. No, you are indigenous and aboriginal, and you made things that dates back further than anything in which that they have documented in history out of Dorchester, Massachusetts, embedded inside of rocks, in which that dates back over 600 million years ago, based on the testimonies coming from the Smithsonian, which they had tried. Scientific American magazine spoke about that specifically, all right? That there was a vase, which looks like a bell with exquisite carving. And this exquisite carving showed particular smelting metal. There was humans who smelted metal. I thought all of a sudden, you know, we ain't get the fire capability until the caveman. That's what they always show you in the cartoons. Oh, unga bunga. Oh, we found fire. Oh, fire stick. Oh, shit. Now we get it. That's what they show you. I didn't tell you this shit. You know, I've been telling you for shit 25 years that you come from God. But you go to a goddamn university, which I went to one. No knocking it. But the thing is that they try to tell you in biology class that you came from an ape. And don't give you an alternative. And if you bring up religion, oh, that's another class. You can't talk about that here. That's another class. But hold on, why the hell I can't talk about that here? Shit, I pay my money just like anybody else. Shit, I got a question. Anyway. So, right here. You must, all right? You must, all right, express your truth in the form of an affidavit. And it goes further, and it says, in commerce, an affidavit must be occupied and must underlay and form the foundation for any commercial transaction whatsoever. There can be no valid commercial transaction without someone putting their neck out on the line and stating that this is the truth, correct, complete, and not meant to mislead. All right? When you issue an affidavit, it has a two-edged sword. It cuts both ways. Someone has to take responsibility to say that it is that this is a real situation. It can be called a true bill, as it may be said in a grand jury. When you issue a affidavit in commerce, you get the power of the affidavit, or the liability, because this has to be a situation where other people might be adversely affected by it. Things change to by your affidavit, in which you are going to affect people's lives. So if you say in your affidavit is in fact not true, then those who are adversely affected can come back on you with justifiable recourse because you lied. You have told a lie, the truth. People depend on your affidavit, and then they have lost because you lied. So you want your affidavit to express your truth. So you have to have a paper trail, especially in their court system, all right, until Moore's bill. You see how this works? Then you can transfer cases from their courts to your courts. Okay, but some of you Negroes posing as Moors are jumping, putting the damn cart before the horse. All right, you got to build yourself up. You can't do that. All right, so here it says an unrebutted affidavit stands as truth in commerce. So claims made in your affidavit, if not rebutted, emerge as truth of the law. Legal maxim, it says, he who does deny omits. So this means that if the DA, assistant DA, does not rebut your affidavit in which that you put in, because guess what? You'll go down to the criminal division. You're going to tell them to put this information in the case. This if you don't send it off certified mail return receipt, which I recommend you doing. And if you have any additional documents, you would go down to the courthouse, and the number in which that they gave you for the court case, you would tell the clerk that you want to enter this information into the court records. All right? That's what you would tell them. You want to enter it into this court record. Now, that means the DA or the assistant DA will get that information. All right? Their job is to, now you will want to send it in at least a week beforehand and give them 3 days in order to rebut it. They're not going to rebut it. So that means by the time you get to court, Your Honor, excuse me, that's your focus. Your Honor, before we can even proceed, or even get to the judicial, adjudication issue, Your Honor, because the DA, assistant DA, never answered any of my questions, or either in my affidavit of rebuttal, in my affidavit for rebuttal. All right, so it says an unrebutted affidavit becomes the judgment in commerce. What that means? There is nothing left to resolve. He didn't rebut, and she didn't rebut, therefore the shit is over. That's the way it's supposed to work, based on the maxims of law. But then again, if you listen to a jackass Moor, or Negro, as I refer to them as, dirty nigga, or dirty Moor,
or just somebody who,
all right, or someone who just
on the road,
right, someone who just takes the show on the road and never even been to court cases, and they trying to tell you what they read somewhere, you know what I'm saying, or that you don't need an affidavit to precede you before the court case, or some might even tell you
don't gotta go,
right, or some tell you right, or some tell you that you don't even got to go. That's what some would tell you, that you don't even got to go. All right. And if you don't go, guess what's going to happen? Hear ye. 3 times the judge is going to knock that damn gavel. All right. And he's going to pass it off to the bailiff. And the bailiff is going to say, on November the 13th, 2016, Joshua Edward Williams did not come to court, therefore he forfeit, and this bond will now be attached and will be an order for his arrest. And they will put a summons together, or I should say it ain't really a summons, but they will put a because it's attached to a bond. All right, it's attached to a bond. All statutes or bonds in commercial. Right? In this commercial game, all statutes are bonds. So when they claim that you violated a statute, what they're saying is that you violated a bond. You broke a bond. In other words, your word was bond, and you broke that bond. So now they can come out and get you. So now the sheriff will come out, a deputy will come out, and they will arrest you for failure to appear. Okay? That's just what it is. That's what happens. So, an unrebutted affidavit becomes the judgment in commerce. There is nothing left to resolve. Any proceeding in a court, tribune, or arbitration form consists of a contest or duel or commercial affidavits wherein the points remaining unrebutted stands as truth and matters to which the judgment of the law is applied. So if the DA does not respond and rebut your affidavit and it goes unrebutted, then the judge is supposed to say, well, this case is over. And there is no continuances because he had ample time in order to do so. So you would say, Your Honor, today is, let's say April the 5th, 2017. Your Honor, I sent this off, certified mail return receipt. Here's the green slip. I sent this off back in February the 2nd, 2017, Your Honor. The DA had 2 months in order to prepare him or herself for this trial. Therefore, I'm not going to go along with a continuance, especially when there's not an injured party based on Shura versus Collins. For a crime to exist, there must be an injured party. There's no sworn affidavit against me in any shape, form, or fashion in this courtroom. There's no one here to state that I have violated them at any level. Therefore, I recommend and I call for and I demand actually for this case to be dismissed, or actually for it to be disposed of. Because dismissed means that it can be brought back. Disposed of means that it can't. And that's what you want. All right. So in commerce, for any matter to be resolved, it must be expressed. So if you don't express it in the form of an affidavit, which was one of the previous maxims of law, then you messed up. Because guess what? No one is a mind reader. You have to put your position out there. You have to state what the issue is and to have someone to talk about and resolve. All right. It says legal maxims. He who fails to assert his rights have none. So if you don't put nothing forth in form of an affidavit before the court, you don't have no rights. This is what I'm talking about. Now they can do whatever they want to you. Because your dumb asses up in there, listen to these ignorant ass Negroes. That's what's going on. You listen to these ignorant ass Negroes and they telling you all the wrong things because they never even been to a court case. Step foot in a courthouse. Have never daggone went to federal court. Have never even went before or sent information to the Supreme Court. We've done it all. We've done it all. All right, so I'm trying to tell you the truth of the matter. Because there's so much disinformation out here, and we're tired of people getting hurt. All right? So that's just what it is. Pay attention to what we're talking about. So right here it says, leave the battlefield first, lose by default. So he who leaves the battlefield first, lose by default. So if the DA or assistant DA does not rebut your affidavit, he left the battlefield. The judge is supposed to be like the referee, the bank rep administrator. He's the referee. He's supposed to be telling you You know what I'm saying? He's supposed to be not to take sides. Side, because that quote unquote lawyer that that might be over there, that DA or assistant DA, they might go and play golf with them, or either go out and eat.
Married into the family.
Right, could be married into the family. Nepotism at its best. You don't know. So the shit could be rigged. All right. So it's best to end it before you even have to go to a jury. That's another trick. Oftentimes they have that shit rigged.
Yeah.
All right. You'll never want to do a jury.
But if you do have to do a jury,
What?
you teach the jury.
If you do, as my wife just stated, you teach them the best way you can, which is with the law.
And you sift out the ones that will help you with questions.
Right. You make sure that you got the best questions. For example, some of the questions in which that
What's your favorite movie? So you can see what they're dealing with.
like, what's your favorite movies? When the last time you read the Constitution?
Just took an oath to it, though.
Right. You just took an oath to it. When was the last time you read it? Because jury members had to take an oath to the Constitution too. Everyone in court took an oath to the Constitution, but the person who is called the defendant or respondent.
Oh wow.
All right. The clerk, the bailiff, who's the sheriff or deputy, the judge, the DA, the assistant DAs, which is the attorneys, the lawyers, the esquires, as well as the jury members. Everybody took an oath to the Constitution. So that's where you would stick at because you're in their court. Now, if Moors was smart, then you have your own laws. Noble Ali gave you the 7 articles, which is of the divine constitution and bylaws. All right? Bey gave you the Zodiac Constitution. Okay? So, you have your own laws. We as United Washington, we have our own laws. So you can actually take your laws if they're trying to do business with you, because that's what they call themselves doing. You bring your own laws. You put it in your affidavit in order for it to be rebutted by the DA, the assistant DA. All right? It says sacrifice is the measure, not willing to sacrifice, no liability, no responsibility, authority of measure of conviction. Nothing ventured is nothing gained. A person must put himself on the line, assume a position, take a stand as regard the matter at hand. And one cannot realize the potential gain without also exposing him or herself to the potential of loss. One who is not damaged, put at risk, or willing to swear or affirm an oath with his commercial liability to claim authority. All right. It says, right, so he who bears the burden ought to also derive the benefits. So here you are, you've written an affidavit, so you should derive the benefit of that affidavit, which in commerce, remember, stands as truth and law. So it says a rebuttable by affidavit is point. So right here it says a lien or claim can be satisfied only through rebuttable by affidavit, point by point, resolution by jury or payment. Well, you're not paying them nothing. So since that's the case, your affidavit should be point by point. All right. You should have them, the DA, the assistant DA, to respond to your affidavit. If they don't, like we said, silence is acquiescence. All right. Silence on any matter is acquiesce. They acquiesce if they don't respond to you. All right. Which means basically is that they forfeited their right. They left the battlefield. They tapped out. Exactly. That's just what happened. They tapped out. So no court, no judge can overturn or disregard or abrogate someone's affidavit of truth. This is why you do an affidavit and not a motion. You do a motion, that's their rules. They can do that with a motion. The judge will deny that in a minute. Well, Mr. Brown, I denied your motion. Okay, well, you can't deny my notice, nor can you deny my affidavit. So everything is an affidavit or a notice. You're giving the court notice. All right, that's what you're doing. You're giving the court notice. You're putting them on notice. All right, so, all right. So it says the only one who can have any capacity or right or responsibility or knowledge affected by it. So if the DA, assistant DA, is claiming to be we the people, which is the state, then the state is claiming that they are adversely affected by it. So put the damn state up on the damn stand. Let's see what happens. Because there's only two ways in which that you can have, all right, only two ways in which that you can have a trial. You have a court trial in which that the judge will decide, which I recommend that's the way in which you have to do it or should do it, or either a jury. For more serious charges, we recommend a jury. For simple cases such as seatbelt violations, speeding tickets, driving without a license, license suspended, license revoked, license, you can do that yourself, in that way. All right. So it says right here, to issue, all right, check this out now. It's his job, his right, his responsibility to speak for himself or herself, to issue his or her own affidavit because no one can speak it for him. No one else can. All right. So, all right, no one else can know what your truth is or has the free will responsibility to state it. This is your job. Right? So this is your job. So they got most of you scared because they told you that this paper terrorism or frivolous claims. And how is it frivolous claims when shit, they making millions and billions of dollars off of people doing damn DNA tests? But for you to state what you might have found out in your DNA test or what you might have found out in history on your affidavit, that you're indigenous and aboriginal, that's supposed to be a problem. Only reason it would be a problem is if you don't state it. If you have relied on prior decisions of the Supreme Court, you have the perfect decision for willfulness. This is United States versus Bishop. All right, Supreme Court cases are stare decisis upon all courts, including municipal, tribunal, inferior courts, which is Article 1, Article 2 courts, and one must take into serious consideration that most of all of the paperwork received from these tribunals are void and are prima facie evidence of paper terrorism. What do prima facie evidence mean? Based on the Black's Law Dictionary, it basically means that it appears to be real substance. It seems to have substance, but it doesn't. Prima facie evidence also says that you can rebut it. So anything that's prima facie evidence, if you put forth your affidavit and express it properly, you can actually rebut the charges in which that is being stated against you in the form of an affidavit. Thus, if you get Inter-American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, that was September the 18th, 1995, it states self-identification as indigenous or tribal shall be regarded as a fundamental criteria for determining the group to which the provisions of this declaration applies. So this self-identification at an international level, at the national level. However, at the national level, it is called self-authentication. self-authenticating. In the United States, according to federal rules of evidence, are supposed to do that. For example, at the federal level, Rule 902, it says evidence that is self-authenticating. Every state has this same rule, all right? Different number, but the same rule. General statutes, all right? So it says Rule 902, evidence that is self-authenticating, all right? It says domestic public documents that are sealed and signed. A document that bears a seal purported to be any state, district, commonwealth, territory, or insular possession of the United States. All right, come down. It says domestic public documents that are not sealed but are signed and certified. All right. A document that bears no seal if is bear the signature of an officer or employee of any entity named in Rule 902 1A and B, which is another public officer. In other words, if a clerk sign your documents, all right. All right. So basically it says a document that bears no seal. So are not sealed, but are signed and certified. So if the clerk seals, excuse me, if she signs and certifies your documents, oftentimes there's a true original copy of the original, it still stands as true. We recommend that you get the seal also, a raised seal. So you want it to be sealed, signed, as well as certified. Okay. 4, foreign public documents. A document that purports to be signed and attested by a person who is authority by a foreign country laws to do so. The document must be occupied by a final certification that certifies the genuineness of the signature. All right. Well, it should have a perjury jurat page that does that and certifies it. Okay, a perjury jurat page. All right, so, and also 2 signatures, which is under common law, or as we say, autographs. You will want 2 autographs from witnesses. All right, and it also says certified copies of public record, a copy of a official record, a copy of a document that was recorded or filed in the public office as authorized by law, right? If the copy is certified as correct by the custodian or by person authorized to make the certification, or a certification that complies with Rule 902 1, 2, 3, a federal statute, or a rule prescribed by the Supreme Court. All right. It goes on. It says official publication, a book. That means you can take a book into court as a form of evidence. A pamphlet or any other publication purported to be issued by a public authority. All right. Newspapers or periodicals. Printed material purported to be a newspaper or periodical. Trade inscriptions and the likes. An inscription, sign, tag, or label purported to have been affixed to the course of business and indicating origin, ownership, or control. Acknowledged document, a document occupied by a certificate of acknowledgement that is lawfully executed by a notary public or another officer who is authorized to take acknowledgement, which everybody knows that a notary public is a Secretary of State. All right. So, commercial paper or related document. Commercial papers, a signature on it, related to related documents, and to the extent allowed to general commercial law. All right. So, these are just some of the ways in which that you can do that, y'all. And this is 901, the federal statutes 901 or rules 901, 902. And like I said, every state, all 50 so-called states have to have those two, which is self-authenticating and which is based on self-identifying. All of that has to be in their information, right? This is rule 902, all right? All right, let me get this here. All right.
And 901.
Right, and 901. 901, 902. Look those up. You see the what is called the rules of evidence, what you can bring into court, and what is seen as evidence. What they be telling you that you can't bring the Moorish Zodiac Constitution in court and all this other stuff, all that is nonsense based on what we just read, based on the rules of evidence. 901, 902. All right, pay attention to what we're talking about. All right, this can save your lives. Because right now, we're being pimped in the system. What we're trying to do is end mass incarceration. The new Jim Crow. Jim Crow, when they have all these people now out here conscious of the real law. All right, we have to get you to that level. And stop following these idiots who ain't teaching you nothing but just debating. Debating ain't gonna get you nowhere. We got people coming to us every day. Their babies get snatched up. All right? This is what's going on. Oh, brother is in jail. All right, because you know, he didn't have a fire permit. Because he didn't have a driver's license. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. These are not arrestable offenses. All right? And see, whenever they take a children, that is a violation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which states specifically that indigenous people, that the so-called state do not have the right in order to take indigenous people's children in any shape, form, or fashion, because that's a form of genocide. Right? I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it says. Go and look it up.
That's right.
You know, as we always say, don't believe me. Go and check it out. Right? So we want y'all to pay attention to that, because there's a lot going on. And like I said, how could we claim black people aren't technically citizens during critique of unjust laws? I didn't write that. Huckabee, who ran for president of the United States, he said that. All right, you can look it up. It's written by Mathis Lilly. It's Lilly. All right, and this is what he says. So, and you go also to MSNBC. Harris Perry says blacks still not seen as American citizens, refugees in America. That's the name of the article. Refugees. Right here, go. Okay. Right here. Right there. All right. So this is refugees in America. What's going on with that? They call the people of Louisiana, when Katrina came through in 2005, refugees. Why are they calling you refugees? Think about that. Think about it. I know it's hard for y'all to you know, to get with this understanding, and it shouldn't be, because the Dred Scott case was about nationality, and you not having one, or in particular, Dred Scott not having a nationality, and because he didn't have a nationality, it states specifically Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Dred Scott case. You look it up. The case in which that the United States Supreme Court held that the descendants of Africans who was imported into this country, this for those who believe that you was imported, came on the slave ships now. Not saying that some, that some didn't, but not all of us did not come on slave ships. Sorry. And it says, as sold as slaves, were not included nor intended to be included under the word citizen in the Constitution, whether emancipated or not. And since you let them put you under African American, then you will fall under this definition of the Dred Scott case decision, would you not? And so it says, whether emancipated or not, and remain without rights and privileges except such as those which the government might grant them. The government might grant them. So blacks are still not considered citizens, and they are still considered slaves by the government. All right. And that makes sense because you're still called civilis mortuus. Civilis mortuus means that you're dead in the eyes of the law, having no standing in law. But yet you need to be in full life or in proper persona juris, in proper persona, which means being in one's own person, proper person. All right. In other words, being a national of a nation, having a nationality, having a status. Right. So there's no such thing as black, Negroes, colored, African Americans, etc. These are fictitious brands identifying to depict, because even if you go to Africa, they will tell you that they are or Zimbabwe or South Africa. And then they will tell you they're the tribe. Okay. Africa is a continent, and there's 54 countries in Africa. Soon to be 54 states, if you find out, if you've been following the United States of Africa. All right, so we know that these are fictitious brands identifying that depicts Christian chattel property, and the word chattel is a French word for cattle, which means an animal. All right, and that's why we say that property can't own property. So as long as you're not reclamated, you property. So it says, and corporate wards to the state owned by the government, i.e. the Jesuits of Rome, the Black Pope, the Pope of Rome, and in laws of man can do with his property as he please. So the Pope can do what he please with the property. So this is why you've seen recently that the Pope came over and he apologized to the indigenous people. He did not remove the edict in which that was passed years ago, right, around the 1400s or so, in which that said, when you find the children of Ham, enslave all of them. Okay. So this is what we have to understand. So you have unalienable rights, but only if you reclaim those unalienable rights, which is your God-given rights, which cannot be legislated by the government because they've already been given to you by the great legislator called God. All right, so you have unalienable rights, and as heirs here in Al-Marak or Amaxum territory, the Pope relinquished all corporations in his motu proprio, and as nationals, you need no permission for any bankrupt corporation in your land. All right, Article 6 of the Constitution. All right, so you have allodial, unalienable rights. All right, that's what you have. You got to start operating as such. So in this motu proprio, it says on the jurisdiction of judicial authority of the Vatican City State in criminal matters, 11 July 2013. Right, this is what it says, that that is a document that is issued by the Pope initiative and personally signed by him. When issued by the Pope, a motu proprio must be addressed to the whole church, to part of it, or to some individuals. And this is why he comes over later on and tells you what? That he apologized to the indigenous people. You thought that he was just talking about the Indians, so-called Native Americans. But no, they was talking to you too, because you are indigenous here. All right? And this is the problem. If you go and read the definition at the United Nations on indigenous people, it states, those who have a historical continuity here on this land prior to the invasion of their territory by Europeans. 2, as well as those who was brought here to the New World and who freed themselves and wish to be reattached to the culture they've been torn. So this means that even for those who said that their ancestry does have slave ships and they was brought over here from Africa, as well as those who was already here. So this is not even debatable. You are still indigenous. So indigenous doesn't just mean, obviously, just here in America. It means any so-called brother or sister, all right? Any so-called brother or sister who is here. As a matter of fact, the word Moors, simply being that it ties to land, means that shit, anywhere that you step your foot at as a melanated being, means that you are the original inhabitant of that landmass. Because you have ancestry that goes back to that, as you are the oldest being on this planet. So it says a document issued motu proprio has its legal effects even if the reasons given for its assurance are found to be false or fraudulent, a fact which would normally render the document invalid. Its validity is based on its issuance by the Pope by his own initiative, not upon the reason alleged. The first motu proprio was promulgated by Pope Innocent VIII in 1484. All right. It continued to be a common form of papal rescripts, especially when established institutions making minor changes to law or procedure and were granting favors to persons or institutions. Now, for those that don't know, you get Ecclesiastical 20. It speaks that the Pope has the ability to abolish all laws in the United States. Okay? So, he just did that. So, according with the peace of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, the agreement between Europeans and Moors was to allow Europeans to come into this land and engage in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, free of oppression, as was not the case of the land today known as Europe. So, the treaty is not, all right, giving, was not a way to give land, as the land and the resources is and are inherited of the people and is unalienable and inalienable rights. You look up Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition, it says unalienable or inalienable rights. It says incapable of being aliened, and that is sold or transferred. So this is why you have to state that you have unalienable rights in your affidavit. Specifically that you cannot be sold or transferred. This is what is going on. Based on that your mother signed that birth certificate in the hospital, it made that child a ward to the state. which means now the state or the government can come in and strip that child from out the home because the mother transferred from the physical life, which is a sentient being, to be transferred to a ward of the state, a straw person, a straw man. Inalienable, it says, not subject to alienation. The characteristics of those things which cannot be bought or sold, transferred from one person to another, such as rivers or public highways or certain personal rights. Now, we know that this is no longer true, because now the selling of the infrastructure of the United States is going on worldwide now, because, or I should say, going on nationwide now. And the reason for that is because the Chinese government gave the United States $700 billion. All right, gave them $700 billion in 2008, 2009, when Barack Obama was going to do that. What was the name of it? What was the name of it, y'all? When he did it in 2008, stimulus plan. That's the name of it, the stimulus plan. So he did the stimulus plan, and he borrowed the money from China, $700 billion. And he gave that money to GM, which put GM back on the market now with the Cars 300, in which that has been selling like crazy. At one time, 300 was, I know I remember seeing 300 just a few years ago, everywhere. 200, 300, so forth and so on. So GM came out the funk.
Avalanche.
Freddie Mac, yeah, exactly. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mac, you know, all of them. And understand that they were saying, if you go back and do your research, you will see a senator stating that they blamed us, so-called blacks now, for the collapse of the market of the mortgage market. They blamed us. The mortgages, just like your birth certificate, is based on collateral. And your signature on that mortgage, which is that promissory note, is being sold. Just like your birth certificate is being sold on the stock market. All right? So because you was not paying, and they was claiming because you wasn't paying off the mortgage, the mortgage companies gave so-called blacks the abilities to get these homes, all right, without them being necessarily qualified to do so, caused the collapse of the mortgage company or mortgage companies. All right, but this is what it said, y'all. But we know what that really means. They simply wanted you to pay off the debt as they always have. All right, so let's say this. So white folks, pale folks, Albion, bought blacks, so-called blacks, Americans on a slave ship, just to continuously denationalize us, miseducate us, lynch us, destroy our economy, ban us from voting, create codes and laws, rights, put us in the projects, import drugs all around us, police terrorize us 24/7, made up dead in the eyes of the law. But Africans who move here don't experience the same treatment? Is that what you're telling us? Huh? I don't know if y'all got what we just said.